into it. This is not just an urban problem anymore. Let's talk about that.
Well, to the viewers of this presentation, it's very important that you see the telltale signs that has occurred with this opiate crisis. This is not an urban crisis anymore. We have said for the last 6 to 8 years that this is going to move into the suburban and rural areas, and it has. We all have family and friends who have fallen down on these issues. Many of them, he or she, starting on the prescription drug mill with doctors, I'm not saying all, that freely prescribe these opiate type drugs. People get hurt, they're in pain. Next thing you know, they're taking it like candy. Then after they can't get it anymore, whether it's themselves or parents have it, they hit the streets for bags of heroin that could be $3 to $5. And that starts the vicious cycle of public safety issues and poverty. So it's important as you watch this video, you're going to have other presenters coming on that are going to tell you the telltale signs you need to see and watch out for in your classroom. Extremely important. And interaction with the family. As you move forward, many times a crime element will occur, and when those hotspot areas crop up, whether in urban America or suburban or rural America, public safety officials, we will hit back hard. But the biggest thing is preventative aspects, which you are viewing now. That's the biggest thing, education. And also when you're able, if somebody has walked the line too far and they need that help, and I commend Governor Baker looking at how doctors' prescriptions are being put out, but probably more importantly, especially in the western part of the state here, we need beds. When people are ready for...
Let's stop there. Let me change angles and then
Okay.
pick it up again.
Okay.
How's it looking, okay?
Well, we need beds to treat...
And you're hitting everything.
Yeah,
Very good.
that was going to be my last point.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, anytime.
And I commend Governor Baker on his initiative to look at the opioid crisis, trying to, first of all, hit it on the front end of doctors, not all, that freely prescribe these prescription painkiller drugs. And then an important aspect is that when an addict is ready to turn he or she's life around, we need beds, you need treatment. The western part of the state has been woefully low on beds. Governor Baker's proposal gets more beds, because when an addict is ready to go, he or she, you can't tell he or she, hey, hold on for 2 or 3 weeks. It's not going to happen. So they need to be ready to go moving forward on that. So it's...
Quiet and anytime.
I commend Governor Baker. I commend Governor Baker on his initiative to tackle this opiate crisis that's not only hindering urban America, but now, as I said before, rural and suburban America, and that he's looking at the front end of it with doctors, not all doctors, that many times will freely prescribe these painkillers. And our people, whether they're on their parents or on their own, are getting hooked on it, and once they run out of it, they move to the bags of heroin for $3 to $5. So I commend them on the front look at this, that's important. But also on the treatment aspect. When an addict is ready to go, he or she, and again, we all have family and friends that have been through this, you can't tell them to wait 2 or 3 weeks. They need that treatment, they need that bed. Western Mass has been woefully neglected when it comes to bed availability and treatment. And Governor Baker's proposal looks to increase that in the hundreds, which is very, very important. So as you look at this video and pay attention to the other presenters, they will tell you the telltale signs that are popping up that your student, he or she, something is going wrong. And those red flags where we need to intervene and get the family involved and stop some of our young people, no matter what creed, color, and background, whether in urban America, rural America, or suburban America, from getting into this vicious cycle of addiction. You're part of the solution. We need your help.
Right to camera.
Yeah.
I want an alternate, is that all right?
Yeah.
Right to camera.
Again, as you watch this presentation, please pay attention to the telltale signs you're going to see that an individual is in trouble, addicted to the opioids or drugs, because you're part of the solution and you can intervene to the right resources in facilitating that individual and or their family getting back on their feet before they get involved in really negative activities or, God forbid, pass away. And we need your help, whether it's in urban America, suburban America, or rural America. Be part of the solution.
Okay, so we're on the roll. Everybody will bring it down. This is a crisis, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And what we've discussed earlier is that it's happening not only in urban areas, it's happening in suburban areas.
Yeah.
Feel free to
Well,
opine.
something that I noticed, part of my job is I travel to communities all across Western Massachusetts. My district includes some of the poorest parts of the state and some of the wealthiest, some of the most urban and some of the most rural, some of the most challenged and some of the ones that have the most opportunity are all in the area that I represent. That's part of what makes the job so rewarding and so enriching. But one thing I have noticed is it doesn't matter what community it is, whether it's a suburban community, a rural community, an urban community, it doesn't matter the makeup, the income level of the family or of the students. Opiates are touching every single person in this state. Every single family has been affected and nobody is safe from it. So we need to be proactive. We need to talk to our children, to our young people about the impact these drugs are having in our communities. And we have to be upfront about recognizing and acknowledging this is a problem that sees no limits, it sees no class, it sees no race, it sees no religion, it sees no income, it's affecting everybody. And that's why we wanted to focus on this in the legislature, make it a priority. Last year alone, just in the year 2014, more than 1,000 people died of opiate overdoses just in the state of Massachusetts. That's only the people that died. Imagine how much higher that number is for people who are struggling with addiction, struggling with use, or suffering in silence and haven't yet been able to get help. And then imagine once you magnify that impact, all the families, all the friends, all the communities and neighborhoods that have been impacted as well. Nobody is immune from it. Nobody is safe from it. We don't say that to scare people. We say that to motivate action, to motivate progress on finding a solution. And one of those solutions is talking to our young people and educating our young people about how dangerous these substances are, and that something might temporarily feel good, but you're going to be jeopardizing the rest of your life if you go down that path.
We feel with this program, education is the answer, and community involvement. We need to get kids involved in things.
You guys going anywhere for the weekend, Mayor?
Baby.
Okay.
Rolling?
Fireworks will be fun.
This program is focusing on education, community support.
So one thing that's actually important to recognize about opiates and the prescription drug abuse that we're seeing is, unlike some other drugs which have had kind of been in the public eye for a long time, very well known how dangerous they are, opiates are often prescribed by doctors as a way to cure pains and are used by millions of people in completely safe and legitimate ways, but are prone to abuse. And so the way we prevent that abuse is through education and through explaining to our young people that if a doctor prescribes one of these medicines for pain, use it just for what the doctor is prescribing it for. And if you're a parent or grandparent or sibling has been prescribed one of those medications for pain, it's for them and for only them. I think one of the things that we've noticed as we've dove into this issue, as we've looked at this issue, is that there's not a lot of knowledge, there's not a lot of exposure to just how dangerous these substances are when they're abused and when they're used for ways that they're not intended to. So it's very, very important. If you have a young person who has had an accident or is trying to manage pain, is getting one of these prescriptions, or someone in the household has one of these prescriptions or one of these pains, that everybody who has access to that medicine cabinet and everybody who has access to those medicines knows that these are dangerous substances if they're not appropriately managed and if they're not used for the reasons that they're intended.
Community support.
Stand by.
Yep.
say this program, we'll talk about how community support is important.
Okay.
You good?
And everybody just settle in so there's no squeaky floor.
No walking.
Yeah. And anytime.
So in this program, we're going to also talk about community support and how important it is for all of our institutions, our schools, our churches, our community groups, our civic leaders to be engaged in this effort together. You know, people who feel like they have a stake in their future, who have a stake in their community, are much less likely to turn to substance abuse as a way to feel better, to feel that high. So we need to do our job as a community, as leaders in our community, and getting across to young people. There's a lot of ways to reach your potential, to have fun, to experience some of the elations that might come with a high that don't involve abusing prescription drugs or abusing opiates. We've got to connect people with our music programs, our community programs, our sports teams. The city of Springfield and all the communities around Springfield have some of the best opportunities for sports, for music, for arts. These are important ways to connect people to the wider world around them. Realize that, you know, there's a lot to see and do beyond maybe just the borders of the school room or their own family or neighborhood. So this is a really important piece of this puzzle, which is if we really want to combat substance abuse, if we want to give kids an option that's beyond, just resorting to pills or to other ways of getting a high, we as a community need to get in there proactively and say, hey, look, join the sports team, try the violin, check out this arts program. And that's really ultimately one of the most important ways to solve this crisis, is to give young people a sense that they have a stake in their future and they have a way to contribute that's valuable and that the wider community is going to value as well.
That was so creepy.
You can pick a spot, Andrew?
Yeah.
You good? All right, for the camera, say your name and spell it.
Anthony Galluni, A-N-T-H-O-N-Y, G-U-L-L-U-N-I.
You can speak directly to me. This opiate problem is big, and we know that it's not just an urban problem anymore. It's suburban. It's affecting everybody. So it's the purpose of this program. We want to start educating people. So if you could talk about the problem a little bit, that would be wonderful.
The problem is widespread and affects all communities and spreads across all socioeconomic lines and geographic lines here in Hampden County, and that's something to which I can speak through my experience as a prosecutor and now as district attorney. So it's important that folks know, particularly parents, what to look for, but first really just the understanding that this problem exists, and it exists in suburban communities, in places all over this county. It's not just in urban areas, it's not just in poor communities, it's everywhere. So we want to make sure that people are aware and are looking for the signs in their children, in their children's friends, to these kinds of issues so they can prevent before the problem takes root.
What do you know about these pharma parties? And if you could say pharma parties are.
Dave, wash your hands. It's a little wider.
Sure. Pharma parties are when typically young people get together. They call prescription drugs from medicine cabinets in the homes of their friends, from their own homes, from old prescriptions that their parents might have gotten or siblings might have gotten. They take them and they put them in a bowl, and the group of kids get together and they select really indiscriminately these pills from this bowl, and they take them to see what is going to happen. And they're terribly disturbing in that of course, the obvious physical effects these pills have on young people, but also it's the breeding ground for addiction.
Talk about that. The kids start with the pills and don't realize it's going to leave them in a withdrawal, and then they turn to this street heroin, this $3-5 bag street heroin, which can be such a nightmare, the overdoses.
I'm hearing these stories remarkably frequently, where kids are being prescribed drugs for sports injuries or other things, and often these prescriptions are overused or misused, and it leads to addiction to other kinds of drugs, typically street drugs like heroin. But you're also seeing it from the sort of pharma parties and these drugs falling into the wrong hands from prescriptions from other people. But what you're seeing, however it starts, the course becomes an addiction to heroin, because pills are expensive and they're inaccessible. And heroin, on the other hand, is both inexpensive and accessible. So when the prescription pills become difficult to find, or they dry up, the source dries up, heroin becomes that next step. It satisfies that addiction, that urge, and it's cheap and it's really, really easy to find to the extent it's very, very scary everywhere in Hampden County.
Tell me about the bad, you okay?
No,
The bad heroin that's out there.
Heroin, like many street drugs, is unregulated, of course. It's uncontrolled. You don't know what is exactly in the substance. Very often there are other substances that dealers use to cut the heroin, so they have more of it, and therefore they make more money. You're seeing substances that are causing immediate death when it enters into the bloodstream. So like all drugs that come from the street, there's no confidence that you're getting actually that for what you're paying. It's a very, very dangerous thing. The heroin itself is, of course, highly, highly addictive and highly deleterious, but very often the additives are what are killing people immediately. So it's a very dangerous thing.
This program is dealing with education and dealing with solutions. And those solutions are community involvement and kids getting high on life, not to sound corny, but being in baseball, being drunk. Can you talk a little bit about how important community involvement is? And you could say this program we'll talk about, and that would help tie it together.
Sure. This program is going to talk about community involvement and the importance of having young people involved in positive activities that hopefully are going to be a natural source of discouragement to get involved with drugs and going to pharma parties. I mean, sports is such a great example that draws kids in a positive way, and it has them around positive influences. But what we want to make clear through this video is parents' awareness of these issues, and hopefully the understanding that it can happen to one of their children, to one of their family members, in whichever community you live in here in Hampden County. So it's important you encourage your kids to be involved in sports and extracurricular activities, but also be aware of the warning signs. Not only the warning signs from your own children, but the friends around whom they spend time. And you see what might be problematic, and you act in a preventative way, because it's always easier to prevent than be reactive.
Wonderful. Anything to add? It's fantastic.
No, thank you. No.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Three more
Good.